One particular episode of the popular ITV video games programme Bad Influence features a segment highlighting the burgeoning and illicit practice of software piracy. The always chipper Andy Crane earnestly tells people that they shouldn't do it because it's against the law and could well blow up your system.
And be careful, if you use a fake cart, it might blow up your system.
Oh no.
But did this have an effect? Well, probably not. The segment highlighted the almighty X-copy specifically, and in doing so essentially told people where you should look to find out how to pirate games, instead of warning them against doing it. There's also an episode of ITV police procedural The Bill from 1994, where a kid spends all his time cracking programs and selling them as part of a group called the Sunhill Cowboys, instead of being at home, and naturally, the evil pirate exploiting his talents gets his collar felt at the end. While there obviously aren't any statistics on hand, it is probable that copy meets where folks gathered together, blanks in hand, powered up their Amigas and traded all their games with each other, became even more popular thanks to such exposure.
At the moment, the manufacturers are one step ahead of the pirates because of these. CDs are relatively cheap to produce and at the moment almost impossible to copy.
But away from the sober tut-tutting of terrestrial television, there was a more direct and often more profane dialogue going on behind the scenes between the hacking groups who filled their bulletin boards with cracked games, your Fairlights, Paradoxes, Cortexes and the like, and the folks who coded the games themselves. It all happened right there on the game's discs, hidden in code that you would only see if you were a hacker, peering into the workings of the game out of sheer curiosity, or for the purposes of getting it out there for everyone to download. A lot of these messages make for entertaining reading, and thanks to resources such as the excellent cutting room floor, these missives from developers are now available for all to enjoy, and they paint quite the interesting picture of life behind the scenes, directly from the coder's chair if you will, that may not always be highlighted in more celebratory look-backs and reminiscence. It should be said that what's here in this video merely scratches the surface. They're just some of my favourites, examples of the various sorts of messages you would see. But there is so much more quality material out there. Everything from fierce barbs to friendly shout-outs, complaints about co-workers to utterly random nonsense. You should absolutely go to the cutting room floor at tcof.net to check out these messages and a whole lot more besides, while longtime cracker and WHD load wizard Code Tapper has compiled plenty more messages on a page for his Amiga and C64 website, with the help of the English Amiga board. They're all in one little place there, and I'll have links to all of this in the description. Anywho, let's get on with it, shall we? The most common type of message is naturally a plea, order, or even a threat from the coder to not pirate the game. As much as we may look back fondly on the bulletin board days with all of their groups, raves and cracktros and sine waves, a programmer in the early 90s who's depending on the royalties from a title's sales in order to get paid may not have felt the same way about it. For a starter, those looking deep into Chrysalis's 1990 puzzle platformer Mad Professor Mariarti would have found a message from the legendary musician Matt Furniss. Hello hacker f***er, this is Matt Furniss. Here's the deal. If you hack this game, I will find you wherever you are and break your legs. And that's a promise. Grammatically wobbly perhaps, but the feeling that Furniss most certainly did not want anyone cracking this game was very well conveyed. Similarly, an uncredited message found in the Bitmap brothers' Xenon states the following: "Pirates are the filth of the f***ing world. 3 people have spent 7 months on this product and scumbags rip it off in a couple of minutes. Yeah, very funny, ain't it?" A harsh message that's certainly designed to shame the crackers, but did it work? Well, judging by the amount of cracked versions of Xenon that are available for perusal on your average TOSEC set, the answer is most assuredly no. Some people took less of an aggressive approach towards the pirates in their messages, recognising that while cracks of the game were almost certain to come out, they hoped that the groups would have a little bit of honour and perhaps wait a little while before putting the commercial game out there. Visionary Design's Dragon's Lair features a message from programmer Randy Linden that hoped to appeal to the pirates' better judgment. A message to crackers: nobody wants copy protection. All it is designed to do is give a program a fighting chance. Now we realise that there is a great competition to see which group breaks this game first. However, if you do break it, please consider this. If you let this game out early after release and there are few sales, it will be very difficult to justify follow-up games of this type. Nobody benefits, not the developers, not the users, and not the Amiga community. Please reconsider holding on for a while and not letting the game suffer. The decision is yours. Did this calmer approach bear fruit? Well, actually, it appears so. A later message from the sequel, Dragon's Lair Escape from Singer's Castle, thanks the pirates for delaying the release of the original game while continuing to ask them to keep their honour and even hyping up a possible future project based on the Terminator, which, alas, never came out. It should also be noted that the code in question is the same Randy Linden who would go on to create the almighty Bleem commercial PS1 emulator, so there you go. There's also the case of poachers turned gamekeepers, people who used to be a part of the scene and are now releasing commercial games, hoping that they've generated enough cred in their time for the pirates to go easy on them. An example of this can be found in Danish ex-scenesters Melon Design's Naughty Ones from 1994, written by programmer Jacob Gorm Hansen and using his scene alias, Paleface. Sorry guys, no time for a proper protection. Have mercy. Melon Design did a lot for the scene, so please give us a break. No challenging break in this one anyways. P.S. We were never paid to make an intro for anyone, but maybe you will reward us by not cracking spreading this one, okay? PPS, I just spent my last money buying a mobile phone, so I really need every dime this game can make. Merry Christmas everyone, seeing you around. Paleface. Unfortunately, other groups like Paradox clearly disagreed when it came to cracking this title, and Kingdom's crack trophy for the game even features a somewhat blunt message of "fuck you" front and centre. While the target of Kingdom's wrath isn't identified, one does wonder if this is a response to Melon's plea to not crack the game because they'd done so much for the scene. A dismissal of the old group as traitors, someone with a more personal axe to grind, or something completely unrelated. It's hard to really say, but it is certainly fun to wonder. A common theme found in a lot of the anti-piracy messages is quite a predictable one. If you're so good at hacking into these games, why don't you try and create a game yourself? There's plenty of examples of this. The classic Blood Money by DMA Design features this one from Dave Jones. Well, hello there, hackers. I'll warn you now that this game has a lot of protection, so it will be a few late nights for you lot. It's a mugs game anyway. You should be writing games and making loads of money like me. You too could afford a 16V Astra GTE. But you are obviously lacking in a few brain cells and will put a week's work into cracking this for what? Sod all, that's what. Well, if you do manage to crack it, send me a copy. Dave Jones, DMA Design, Mintlaw Park, West Ferry, Dundee, DD5 1RD. In return, you will get sod all, as usual. In the meantime, I'll be thinking of you when I'm in Florida, spending some of my dosh. An even more cutting example can be found in Suspicious Cargo, a 1991 game from Gremlin. This one here is written by a man called Dave the Exile, who I believe would be Dave Lincoln of Exile Designs. Mr. E says hi to all the sad crackers, that means you, who can't crack this 100%. Have fun with the checksums, lamers. I'll be looking out for a copy I can finish, so sad bastards, Merry Christmas. Till then, war. Dave Exile says, the game may run, but does it play till the end? You dicks probably can't finish it to find out anyhow. Those who can, write games. Those who can't, just crack games. I feel sorry for you sad people. Maybe one day you'll get a life. Oh, but you would need a personality for that. And you might have to come out of your bedroom. Till then, you'll have to get your kicks from cracking games and reading wank mags. Over and out, Dave the Exile. Mind you, some companies were a little bit more canny and saw these messages as a means of advertisement. If you're good enough to get into this game, maybe you're good enough to come and work for us. There's no end of messages that feature a phone number and an invitation to get in touch if you know your way around the Amiga's blitter, such as this one here composed by Titus Software's Eric Kane for Fire and Forget. Amiga's blitter is very fast if you use it directly. If you know how to use the disk hardware direct, call me, eKane from Titus 331 4332 1092. Thank you. On a similar theme, you do have messages where the coders may not necessarily be fully disapproving of the practice of cracking, but they're certainly going to try and stop it, or at least delay it, through a hefty copy protection system full of sneaky checksums and the like. The coder might then wonder if you, hacker, a pathetic creature of meat and bone, are up to the challenge. Can you push through and release a good crack of this game? Here's a quite extreme message like this courtesy of Morbid Visions, makers of Psygnosis's 1993 game Perihelion. Yo buddy, I don't know and I don't care how and why are you here, I just want to give you a few advisors in case if you're here to crack this stuff. Well, in every 80 seconds a man is murdered, and in every 10 seconds another one of our protection stages starts. In other words, you can be sure that you will never have a working crack of Perihelion. Wanna bet? Of course you're proud and you'll try, I too would try, but you will fail because you won't even realise where did you fail, what's the problem, what is protection and what is not. That's life. Will you play it over a dozen times? It won't work. Will you release a f***ing dying half crack? What a shame. Relax, honey, you're gonna suck up, not because you're so lame, but because we are so good. Right? Well, that's all for today. Now go back to your childish toys and let's see how our computerized insecticide works on parasites like you. By the way, did you know that piracy is theft? Oh, surely not, sorry. Now at least you cannot say we didn't warn you. Signed, Morbid Visions. It should be noted that, as alluded to in this message, indeed, not all cracks are created equal. If you're using a TOSEC set of ADFs that feature all sorts of cracked versions of games, you'll certainly run into some bad ones where you may be able to start the game and play it for a bit, but it could be unstable and crash a lot, or indeed just completely fail after a certain point, perhaps in spectacular fashion, like this cracked version of Cannon Fodder 2 did for me on a stream, just after finishing Mission 4. Wow, it's like my Amiga Emu just up and ate itself. Left. Could be dangerous, you go first. Of course, not every developer message is aimed squarely at the scenesters and pirates, telling them in salty language to not copy the game, making promises related to a budding hacker's legs and the breaking of them, or hyping up the trouble the swashbucklers are going to have figuring out the game's protection system. There's a lot of happy little shout-outs to fellow employees, as well as the occasional airing of a coder's frustrations, such as Jeremy Sherlock's text in Splinter Vision's Eco Phantoms, bemoaning the efforts of someone who walked out on the project. Written by Toby Simpson and Jeremy Sherlock, it must be said that Richard Costas was the original programmer along with Toby on this project, but because Ricky walked out and I took over from him, rewriting a lot of his shit and badly written, unprofessional and ridiculously long-winded code, and the fact that this was only half finished, I have decided not to include this fat git in the credits for this game. Signed, Jez. I will credit Richard Costas with the blame for a lot of hassle, stress, late nights, and my hatred for the twat. So, who even was Richard Costas? He doesn't seem to exist beyond this furious message, and we have no idea at all if this savagery was warranted, but it goes to show that the hidden texts were certainly a good way for coders to release their anger at a co-worker, or indeed a boss and the system that they're working on. How about this one from 1988 Streetgan, translated from the original German? The entire chip RAM is needed. F***ing Amiga. I'm selling an Amiga 2000 Board B with 2 disk drives and hard disk. See you again at the Archimedes. Why do you think I'm selling that piece of crap Amiga? Fuck Mark Ulrich. Mark Ulrich being the founder and boss of Rainbow Arts, and Mr. C here being Frederick Haugen, who was previously a musician in the demo scene before making this game for Time Warp Productions, a dev studio that was very much associated with Rainbow Arts. In any case, looks like the Amiga didn't make it possible for him. Some of the messages are even quite friendly when it comes to the pirates. Paul Carter, the programmer for Millennium's Mr. Blobby, simply put a little message in saying that he'd left some sectors free just for the Crackers intros. And if you want something that's a bit more heartwarming, well, look no further than the message that Simon Phipps left for Cause, Saint and Greavsie. This game is dedicated with love to Jane, the lady I marry tomorrow. Simon Phipps, 2nd of June 1989. You must be hacking to find this. All the best to you for the future. P.S. This game was started 15th of February 89, this is the last, hopefully, time I change it, 30th of August 89. And married life is great. In a word, DAW. But in the world of hidden developer messages, on the Amiga, there is one person who stands high and mighty over everyone else. A genius who could combine everything mentioned in this article into one long-winded, verbose, and usually quite funny bit of reading. And that man was Richard Aplin. Aplin, the man who was often responsible for completing ports of games such as Final Fight and Double Dragon with little time and almost no help from the original creators, was a master of the hidden message. Final Fight, a sequel of sorts to one of his other thoroughly eloquent roasts of the Crackers on Line of Fire, is quite possibly his magnum opus. It features the usual dismissal of Crackers and their exploits, but it goes to a whole other level, mocking them with a fill-in-the-blanks crack-tro that deserves to be experienced in full. Cracked, trained, knobbed up and half-parted by the amazing blank. Call our UK HQ on blank for 1.4 tetrabytes of wares stored on Sinclair Microdrive, online 25 hours a minute, 75 19.2 gigabaud. Hot greets to Taz, Faz, Gaz, Baz, Haz, Kaz, Waz and Saz. Limp arm wavings to humongous big penis substitute of the utterly inanely named crew. Look mum, I can use Seeker, Tetra Pak and DMS. Next week I'm learning bowel control. I've got a mate who can do fantastically dull pseudo house music on Noise Tracker, and another mate is really amazing at doing uninteresting bas-relief metallic logos on D-Paint. We're going to call ourselves Wet Dream Design and do a game for Psygnosis, and they'll pay us £7.5 million and we'll get our photos ridiculed in Zero, and then we're going to do Super Fanicon games and charge more than the national debt of Brazil. And after that, it's virtual reality. And I actually saw Andrew Braybrook at the PC show, and he actually spoke to me, and we had this really good conversation, and I told him all about how crap Rainbow Islands is, and how he should have written it using Seeker, and used hardware sprites for the scrolling background, and when I asked him why he left out the bit on the arcade machine when you first turn it on, and some glitched graphics come up for a 30th of the second, which really contributes to the gameplay, he said, "Why don't you shut the fuck up and leave me alone, you irritating little twat?" And I knew he was just saying that, because he knew I was right, and how much better than him I am. And I bet he's never written a Parallax Sprite Starfield signed Scrolly Bob demo with soundtracker music in his life. And I bet he wouldn't even know how, and he's rubbish anyway, you know. I actually saw one BNE in his code that could have been a BNE.S, and I nearly wet myself. I mean, how can he call himself a programmer when he obviously isn't nearly as good as me, etc, 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 etc. Anyway, I must go now, as my mum says my rusks are getting soggy. See you later, gwingis dudes. Intro by Huge Red Pork Sword of the Total Annihilation and Death to Everyone crew. P.S. When I grow up, I want to be a British railguard. Apologies to BO employees everywhere. Totally naff intro with some filled polygon graphics that rotate around their own axes because I don't have a clue how the code works as I got it off my mate in Sweden. Pointless and really badly bugged trainer options with oh my god, not another parallax starfield, and signed scrolly message, if I ever see another one, I'm going to leave the country and become a Trappist monk in Tibet. Mind you, that wouldn't be a very good idea now the Chinese have invaded. Ah well, maybe just suicide or even demo right-suicide is the answer. Pitifully badly cracked version of the game that only runs with an A501 Insider RAM board on my computer, and anyway the file loader I got out of Amiga disk drives inside and out has the headstep delay set much too fast so it crashes all the time, and even then it uses a software timing loop so it won't work on faster processors. Sometimes I really don't know why you lot bother, I really don't. Oh shit, it's Guru'd. Ah well, what do you expect? Your Amiga has the one colour fat Agnes chip, and the power light is too bright, and the drive makes the one pitched clicking noise. It works alright on my TV, honest. Right, that, to quote my line of fire startup sequence, is that over with. Aplin's messages, which can be found in a few of the games he worked on, range from cute little one-liners to full breakdowns of a port's development, with so many different details. Everything from teardowns of the original arcade board to full-on developer diaries, as well as a long list of all the music that helped Aplin through a port's creation. While not an Amiga game, his message on the Amstrad CPC version of Shinobi in particular is well worth seeking out and reading on TCOF. It's a diary of sorts, a look at the rigmaroles of late 80s and early 90s game development from right in the very thick of it. Something really that's rarer even than a hen's golden tooth. Some wags may well say that these messages are a fair bit better than the ports that they came from. And well, they would be right. It's pretty obvious to say that these messages had little to no effect on the scene and how quickly it generated cracked versions of games. At best, they may have made a newbie feel bad for half a second or so before they went ahead and clicked the big old execute button that only exists in 90s computer-based TV thrillers and dramas. It's perhaps a reminder that legends of the business such as the Bitmaps, or Dave Jones, or Barry Leach, he of the "You Will Not Copy This Game" sample embedded deep into Lotus 2's title screen music,
"You will not copy this game,"
may not be as nostalgic or as positive about the Amiga's scene culture as a lot of us are, even all these years later. On a personal level, the release of a game into the scene may well have left an already hard-up coder with less money than they'd hoped to receive from a title. They do, however, provide a bit of a time warp back to these days and into the world of programming games as the developers lived it. Whether they're vicious screeds, shoutouts to mates, or even song lyrics, we can be very thankful that the people who wrote them didn't highlight all of this text and hit the delete key just before the game went gold, so that we can now enjoy them ourselves and get a look into the programmers' occasionally inscrutable minds. Bye for now.